Welcome to Goalie Science, the podcast that bridges the gap between goaltending, science, and peak performance. I'm your host, Jamie Phillips, a former professional goalie, currently pursuing a doctorate in physical therapy and specializing in goalie performance coaching. Joining me as always is Dr. Ben Cernick, a seasoned goalie coach and sports analytics specialist. Whether you find yourself at home, on the road, or at the rink, grab a cup of your favorite beverage and let's drop the puck on this week's episode.
Jamie, we're back.
We are back.
Another week, and in theory, we have things to talk about.
We would like to believe we have things to talk about. Also, I need to apologize for last episode. I realized I did not edit the audio, so I was at about 2 a.m. when our friend Derek, friend of the pod, Derek Boujan, texted me and said, "Why are you doing the podcast in the bathroom?"
Yeah, why are you underwater again?
Yeah, why underwater? That was my fault. I was down for the count, very sick last weekend. I know a lot of people are getting sick. A lot of actually my goalies have missed and had to cancel their skates because they're sick. It's going around. So wash your hands, cough into your sleeves, that kind of stuff. But Ben, holiday season is coming up.
Yes.
So I'm curious what your opinion. So I've been going back and forth with some parents, and they've been kind of debating between should they take some time off? Should they just keep going full steam ahead? Just, there's a couple of Christmas camps. I'm running a Christmas camp. People have time off. It's the holiday season. What are your thoughts around it? And then we're going to go with some suggestions on if you're just going full steam ahead, what should you do? And then if you're taking some time off, kind of what should your return back structure be like? So Ben, I'm going to kick you off. I'm going to lead you off here. Do you think there's any upside or downside to taking time off versus continuing, staying the course, doing some camps, practice, goalie training throughout the Christmas holidays?
I think this is going to be everyone's favorite answer, but I think it depends. I think it depends on.
It does depend.
There we are. First, how long into the episode are we here? It depends. No, I think so. Like we run a holiday camp. We run 2 different weeks of it actually, and I really love our holiday camp. We do like half day camps and like kind of even like an extension, just like 2-hour skates as like an option. Mm-hmm. So we don't do like the 4 hours, 9-hour camp sessions.
Well, and then before I'm going to cut you right off like I usually do, but I think the 9-hour camps and stuff are good, but like the amount of time, even in the summer, like when you're spending like 4 or 5 hours on the ice a day, that's too much. You can be at the rink and have stuff like it's a full day camp. Like I even like sometimes they're exhausting to run. At the end of the week, I remember one time when Boosh and I ran a camp. It was a 5-dayer, 2 ice sessions. So I think it was about 2 hours, maybe 3 total on the ice a day. And I remember it's at the quad, and him and I sat out on the bench outside the quad for 3 hours, just white. Didn't leave, couldn't move. But like, those ones are exhausting. But a lot of camps will have like many, many hours on the ice. That's just too much. But that was just my little caveat. But sorry, continue.
No. So we're talking about camps in late to December and early January, not August, Jamie. Thanks for joining. I know. Thanks for joining the podcast. So again, big asterisk. We run one, and I really like ours. So big fan of it. I think it's fun. I think these holiday camps are like a really good opportunity for some goalies who aren't able to get a lot of goalie training in during the season. So yeah, that's my number one piece. If you're a goaltender who, let's say you play on a team, and unfortunately, your team doesn't allow you for goalie training, but your schedule is also really busy, so you don't have time for extra goalie training. Like that's a pretty common situation, right? Where it's like, okay, well, my team doesn't have a goalie coach. We don't bring in goalie coaches, but I'm also on the ice 5 hours a week, and so are my brother and sister. And so when am I ever going to get to goalie training? Yeah, I know we had those conversations with parents all the time who are like, oh, we want to get some skates out, but like when's the time? And so I find these little like holiday mini camps, I kind of call them, because again, like they're half day or they're a couple hours on the ice. I find they can be a really good little tune up for minor goalies who just haven't had a chance to get on the ice a lot with a goalie coach. So a really condensed way to get kind of like the 3 or 4 big staples of reminders for coaching that you can drill back into the goalies, right? Even things like, okay, we're cutting back through the crease when a pass goes laterally instead of coming over top of the crease, right? That's a big common thing for younger goalies. Making sure we're head checking and scanning the ice regularly, making sure we're making saves in front of our body instead of reaching sideways. All those things for younger goalies, which you can get away with in games and practices, especially when you're not doing goalie training, but are not ideal. They're not perfect. So for the minor hockey goalies, I'm a huge believer in these little tune-up camps, especially because, again, normally teams stop skating on like the 22nd, 23rd. Depends on your team. Obviously, it's going to be depends. Sometimes even earlier, right? But you might go like a week and a half without any hockey. And so this is the reality for parents too, and the parents listening. But like, you got your kids at home for a couple of weeks.
We'll take us.
We'll take them. We'll have some fun. We'll talk about some, and like at our camps, we do video sessions and stuff, and you and I have talked about this a lot. We find just how helpful, we believe how important that is for goalies, just to see things visually and to talk about hockey, like how valuable younger goalies, and actually goalies of any age, is just talking about goaltending is really improves understanding. So my first summary is that for those like for minor hockey goalies, especially ones, but this is for all of them. I think they're great. I think they're a really nice option, especially, again, they're not, we're not on the ice for 12 hours a day. We're not doing 4 hours of ice plus an hour of dry land, right? So
I agree. I caveat too is I do run a holiday camp as well. I do it two groups, like a younger group and an older group, and we're on the ice for about an hour and a half each day. And this one, I'm going to add in a little bit of video work as well. We'll probably more with the older kids, just because the younger kids, we don't have to get into too much detail. The answer obviously is it depends. Now, I love this time of year. This time in the off season is great because all my goalies come back, and the ones that are playing college and junior, they'll come back, and some of them haven't played a lot of games. So like for me, I'm not talking about the minor hockey kids, or sometimes it is minor hockey kids, but they haven't played a lot of games, or they've been dealing with different injuries. So this is a time where we can come, like, step back, get their game, kind of like break any bad habits, get things back to where we want them to be, build some momentum. For a lot of my minor hockey goalies, there are some big, in Ontario at least, there's some big Christmas tournaments or holiday tournaments. The Marlies tournament is one. There's a couple other ones, but the Marlies one was always kind of like the biggest one. So like, yeah. And so if you're a goalie, especially if you're going into your U16 year or minor midget year, that's a big time. Like that's where we talked about scouting. Like if there's ever a time for scouts, it's probably at that tournament. So I want to make sure that they feel good going into the tournament. So again, the sessions are not 12 hours on the ice. Oftentimes it's a lot. It will start with like heavy tracking, positioning emphasis, and then straight into like more game-like situations where I want them to have to make reads. I want them to have to be able to process information. And I do think there's a lot of benefit in it as well. There's a lot of different nuances in there. And again, if you're a parent and you're off work and your kid's off school and you want a couple hours, just send them to the rink. We'll tire them out. We'll make sure they get better, have some fun. And I like it too, because, for me, I'm not in the clinic. I have some time. I get to like put a lot more focus and emphasis on what I'm doing, making sure that each goalie, gets all the attention that they deserve. Now, on the flip side of this, there definitely is an upside to taking a little bit of time off. If you have been run ragged all, for the first part of the year, like it's a lot. Like Ben said, if you have brothers and sisters and they've been going to hockey and you're a parent and you've been running around driving everyone, maybe you're just like, hey, like I want to decompress. And I think that's totally fine. There's nothing wrong with that. What I wanted to, and what I talked about with Ben, is if you're taking time off, even if it's anywhere from, 5 days to up to like 2 weeks, what should this kind of like the return to ice protocol look like? It's a little different for me than it would be in the off season, because, you're taking time off and then you're probably immediately jumping back into either a game or a practice and a game. So when it comes to taking time off, often your tracking is usually the first thing that goes. You get into a rhythm, your brain kind of gets used to and adapts to the speed of the shots, different shots. When you go some time without that, it's very easy for you to kind of feel behind, feel slow when you get onto the ice. So when you return back, whether that's practice or honestly, dare I say it, I think you should probably step on with a goalie coach before. I know, crazy. Step on with a goalie session before you get into your main practice and then a game, just so that you let them know that, hey, like I've taken some time off. Like I need to make sure that I'm feeling good. I'm feeling crisp. So doing a lot of tracking, positioning, keeping it simple, making sure that you're not doing too much to could possibly injure yourself. Because if you go from 0 to 100, we know that's oftentimes last thing you want to do is tweak your groin or hip. But for me, it's get the eyes back into it. Make sure tracking is good. I'll often do a lot of work through screens, and I'll often do a lot of work through flash screens to really challenge their eyes after, like I use it as a progression. So we start with nothing, like no visual distractions, and then we build our way up. But I find that for me, I've had the best results getting goalies kind of dialed in, quote unquote, faster when I've done that kind of strategy. But Ben, I'm curious to know your thoughts.
Well, I just get them back on the ice and I tell them where every shot's going to be for the full hour. And boy, do they look good. Boy, they've got it after that.
But then they go to that first Marlies game. They play against the old pesky. No, they're not St. Catharines Junior Falcons anymore.
Nope. Those are Niagara North Stars.
The Niagara North Stars, and boy, do they get worked.
Do you think, this is a side note, every time someone brings up the Marlies tournament, do you think my 6.5 goals against average in the Marlies tournament in 2009, 2010 was my downfall? Do you think that's why my career never took off?
Probably why you didn't play in the O. I confidently say that. I remember there's one, I remember like when I was in minor midget, we were a good team. We were in the top 5 to 10 in Ontario.
You were a great team.
We were a great team. And I remember we did play the Marlies, and actually Malcolm Subban was on the other team. And I remember that our parents couldn't watch the game because all the scouts were standing along the glass around the entire
rink. They couldn't see.
Like, so our parents couldn't really see. And I think like as a 15-year-old, you kind of think and you're like, oh, that's so cool. Like I'm such a beauty. But then I look back and I'm like, oh my God, that's actually crazy.
Yes, look,
that is crazy. But like that's the way it was. And and then that's when hockey starts to turn into a little bit more of a business when people are evaluating and stuff, and you're talking to scouts after, and they call your house and they're grilling you with questions and stuff. But I do think it's a good experience because it teaches you how to kind of like play with pressure, and like you have to learn how to like disassociate between all of the scouts watching and then what's going on the ice, and like, can you still perform? And like it does kind of weed out kids that either have developed that mental ability to go through that stuff, and those that need time to kind of work around it and develop it. So
yeah, my biggest take there is that like I think that side of the game and making judgments on 15-year-olds is probably wrong.
It's super accurate.
Never very good at predicting.
I've never heard of a 14-year-old who's committed to a university and not panned out. Never happened.
Yeah. Or actually go on to that university when they're committed at 14.
I know. I played junior till they're 21 and then somehow still end up getting to. I know, it's crazy. But anyways, Ben,
you're like, hold on, there's an important caveat here. Tell me, how many people from your U16 team got drafted into the OHL? Was it 12?
It was a lot. But I think it was about half the team.
Yeah, yes. Close friend of the program, Dougie Hamilton, once told me I didn't open the door fast enough for him. So
I had a lot of assists that year because him and Joey DeConciliis, who ended up playing at Brown, I would just leave the puck behind the net and both of them would pick it up, wheel around, go end to end, either pass and score or just score. And a lot of assists.
Yeah. I mean, shout out Joey. He was like, I'm pretty sure he was basically committed to Brown in U16. More or less.
I think he was.
Like, he wasn't, but he still got drafted in like the 5th round of the OHL draft. I remember them getting drafted, and I mean, obviously we played in the same organization. But everyone being like, oh, what a waste of a pick that was.
Yeah, I do. Actually, now that you say that, I do remember that he was like, quote unquote, like going to Brown the whole time. Like that was like, and he did, and he still ended up going to Brown. And he had a good college career. And I think he played a little bit of pro.
He did after. I don't remember where, but yeah. No, I mean, it was super fun to me because I remember I played with his brother too.
Yes.
All the fun connections there. But yeah, let's actually get back to the holiday skate component. Shocking. Did we get derailed again? Who could have seen this coming?
No.
No, I'm the same way. Like I think from a personal perspective too. I know that when I was playing in Canadian University, I definitely skated over the holidays, and I know when I flew back from NCAA, I didn't really because the break was just shorter and I couldn't.
Yeah.
Which is something that's okay. Like, I think it's important to remind goalies that you can, like you said, you can take a week off and you're not going to suddenly forget how to be a goaltender, right? You're not going to suddenly, if you had a great first half of your season and you have to take a week off for whatever reason, whether it's family, maybe your family goes away for the holidays and there's no access to ice, right? There's no need to panic. There's no need to really worry. Jamie, like I agree with you entirely. Like if you're really concerned, get a session with the goalie coach for like an hour before you get back in your team stuff, and just have some really simple tracking stuff. I really like short drills where they're like a 2-movement sequence into a shot. Maybe it's like start at the top of your crease, lateral release to the side, butterfly back to the middle shot, something back to find, like really, really short, simple drills that just allow you to have good vision, find your locations, hit your spots, and not overdo it and just get lots of, again, higher quality, simple reps. I think that's a really nice way to ease your way back into it after some time off too.
I agree. I used to play at the GLI tournament when I was in college. So there are often times where we'd have to be back in Detroit day before Christmas or on Christmas Day. So depending on my exam schedule, if my last exam was on a Friday and I had to be back in Detroit on a Tuesday, so I would drive home 12 hours, see my parents for a little bit, skate with Booge, and then have to go right back to Detroit. So there was no time off. Like that wasn't even an option. And we're playing in a really important tournament. So like I needed to keep everything sharp. There wasn't even a question. And also like I enjoyed getting back to on ice and doing those skates and seeing everybody. So that was an upside for me. But Ben, I think this is a good time to take a break.
Look at you.
I know, calling it.
All right, we'll see you in 12 seconds here. Jamie, we're back.
We're back.
We said our piece about holiday skates. We think they're good, but it's also okay if you don't.
So speaking of skates, we had a question about skates. Good transition. Look at that.
What's going on? He's back from being ill. He's on a game.
Now that I have not spending all day on the couch coughing up a lung, I am back. But we had a question about skate sharpening, and I will admit something that this is not something that I put a lot of thought into, because if people are like, oh, what did you sharpen your skates at? So what I did was Dan Turple, potential friend of the show,
friend of the program.
When he was kind of like the guy at On Ice, when we were younger, he played with the Atlanta Thrashers organization, a little bit with Atlanta Thrashers. And I remember one day I just walked in at On Ice. I probably would have been about 12, 13. Just asked what he got his skate sharpened at. He said 5/8, and that's what I got my skate sharpened at the rest of my life.
And that was history. That's science right there, baby.
That is how you do it. That is called anecdotes. So the question is skate sharpening. What do they mean? Do we have any preference? So I had to do a little bit of research. So this will be my best explanation. So essentially, the way it goes is the most dull that you're going to get is basically a 1-inch cut. So think about it in opposites. The larger the cut, the less bite. The smaller the cut, so usually I don't know if anyone goes anything smaller than a 3/8, the more bite. And that's kind of how you distinguish it. Now there is, I guess, a scale in between. A 5/8, which is what I got, was a little bit closer to the softer side. Half-inch tends to be kind of a standard for players. Some goalies will use half-inch, but I find it either hovers between 5/8 or like 3/8.
I was a 3/8 person, and I'll make my case for this later.
Yeah, and so a softer ice and a less bite in theory gives you like more of a glide because you're not getting your edges connecting, like cutting into the ice, versus a sharper cut will be like you don't get as much glide, but you have more control in theory. Things like shuffling might be a little bit more difficult, but things like T-pushing and power pushing are going to be way more crisp and require less effort. And I'm again saying this in quotations, less effort than something with a sort of a less bite. But that's, hopefully that made some sense. That's kind of the scale and how it works. For my personal opinion, what do I think is best? I don't know. I'm going to be honest. It all really depends on the goalie. Sometimes there are kids, their skates are just way too dull, and then sometimes they are way too sharp. And I usually say, if that's the case, I just say like, let's go one step down, try it, see how you feel, or one step up, try it, see how you feel, and going from there. But it's all personal preference. And then also a lot of it comes to what type of skate you're wearing. I remember when I guess now they're Trues, but when VH first came out, they had like a tapered cowling. So the cowling was a little close to the middle. And they said, like on the instructions when you got it, if you typically got your skate sharpened at, say, like a 1/2 inch, go slightly more dull because they're angled in a way that you're going to get the equivalent edge with a more dull cut. And so I think I did try that out. I think I ended up going like 5/8. I think actually I went 5/8 when I was in Reebok my whole life. And then when I went to True and VH, I think I did end up going 3/4 because that was the equivalent cut. So I went one step down or dull. And I think the best thing is to play around with it. That's my best advice, is to play around and just bounce between 3/4, 5/8, 3/8, and 1/2 inch. Figure out what feels the best. Give it a full skate. It's going to feel awkward each time. Wait for the off season to do this also. And then just try to what feels the best. And that's probably the best way to figure it out. Or do what I do and just ask a pro and just stick with it. Doesn't matter what it feels.
Don't think for yourself. Don't whatever your local pro wears. Yeah. I'm going to make a case for a few things. I think the number one most important thing for goalies when it comes to skate sharpening is to do it more often.
That's a good point.
Whatever your cut is, please get your skates sharpened more often. If you are, I'm going to make, again, this is a blanket statement. This is not supported by data. This is entirely based on feel, experience, and what I see on a regular basis. When you get over 130 pounds, so I'm going to say, this is, again, let's say for most people like you, 14, you 15, you're probably looking at getting your skate sharpened once a week. And that is surprising to people. When you get into junior, you get into college, you might be getting your skate sharpened twice a week, every 3 skates, which is what I did when I was playing in college. It's every 3 skates because I needed it to be. So people who know me, and I think I even said this on the show, I was a very, very average skater for the levels that I played at. So the only way that I was going to be somewhat competent was ensuring that I was always going and operating at 100%. And so that made me make sure my skates were sharp. So I spent too much time skating on the ice. I did not get to my feet enough. It was a very bad thing. Hand up, self-awareness there. You got to get up. But because of that, I needed to be able to cut at all times when I was down. So I used to get my skate sharpened at 3/8 twice a week when I was playing in college. And I probably got my skate sharpened more in a month than most goalies will get in an entire season. Right? And I'm not saying if you're, a U14, you don't have to get your skates sharpened twice a week. But I think the most important thing that you do is whether you, again, start with a shallower cut. So again, the cut, the inches of the cut refers to the arcing depth of the cut in the blade, for whatever that's worth. So a shallower cut, which is closer to 1 inch, again, is just shallower. But the point being, like, whatever that cut you get is, it just needs to be regular enough, because your comfort with your cut should be like how I feel the first and second skate after I get it sharpened. That's what the preference comes down to. It's not, how my skates feel after 3 weeks after I got them sharpened. That doesn't matter.
No.
right? Like if you like your skates best 2 weeks after you get them sharpened, get a shallower cut and sharpen them more often.
Yeah, I would always get my skates sharpened the practice before a game, and that's kind of how I would do it.
Is Friday, you get them sharpened after Wednesday's practice.
Yeah, again, Wednesday after Wednesday's practice, having Thursday. When I started to have more pregame skates, I would get them sharpened before the pregame skate so I can get a feel for it. And then I would typically just ride it through the weekend. If I had just a Friday, Saturday game, I would get them sharpened Wednesday and then go through there just because I wanted to get a feel. I wanted to just understand what my edge is because sometimes there's little changes and maybe it's a different equipment manager and tweaked it slightly. And then also, depending on where I played, it did influence a little bit of it. So when I played down south in like Florida and Oklahoma and the ice was really soft, I tend to require just more like a deeper grind to be able to just go through the ice better versus when I played in Manitoba, which shout out to it's now Bell MTS Center, probably the best ice in the world, right? Oh my gosh, so good. So good. I don't know what they're doing there, but it's so good. I didn't have to be as particular just because that ice felt like ice is supposed to. And so I could tweak it that way. Did you ever like profile your skates at all, Ben?
Before we get into profile, I just have one note. This is something there's not a lot about goalie skate sharpening online. A lot of it refers to player stuff. Makes sense is when we're players and there are goalies. So the one thing that a lot of information, even from like companies like Bauer, True, a lot of them will talk about information for skate sharpening from a player skate perspective. And one of those commentaries is like if you're playing on softer ice, you might want a shallower cut. For goalies, that's not necessarily true, right? Because on softer ice, you need to still be able to dig into the ice to cut, right? So a shallower cut might not work the same way for a goalie skate, especially when you're down skating compared to a player skate. I just want to toss that out there. Again, there's a lot of personal preference, and there's not a ton of information out there for goalies and goalie skates on those type of things compared to player stuff. So just a caveat that, again, softer ice, players might go shallower, so they might go from 1/2 to 5/8. That's not necessarily true for a goalie. You still might want to be able to dig really deep into the ice because you need to play around.
Yeah, there's no right or wrong to this. You just have to play around and find out what works, what works for you. Actually, before we talk about profiling, so you know, if some of my parents listening and you're like, sharpen your skates 3 times a week, that sounds expensive. Yeah. So a lot, you know, when you get to a higher level, you have an equipment manager whose their job is to sharpen skates. So that is a massive privilege. I know skate sharpening can range anywhere from $5 to up to $15 a time. I know. Have you ever used this, like one of those Sparks machines to sharpen your skates?
Is Sparks going to sponsor us before I say my answer?
I mean, I don't think anyone's sponsoring us, but no, I know there are a lot of like minor hockey teams will use them. And I've heard mixed reviews.
I've had my skate sharpened on a Sparks one time, and only one time, and I think that gives my answer there for how I felt. But I know people use them. I know some people are fine. The big thing, and this is with all sports, but I think this is especially true in hockey and especially true in goaltending, people are particular about their equipment, right? Yeah. As goalies, I think we are definitely the most particular about our equipment of pretty much any sport. And so you can get your skate sharpened on that and be totally fine and think it's great. Or you can hate it, right? I think the biggest thing we keep saying is that you have to play around with it yourself. So I've heard mixed reviews. I've heard people who are totally fine with it. Admittedly, the people who are totally fine with it are people who I would say are less particular about their stuff.
That's right.
I've also in the past couple of months had my skate sharpened intentionally, like on a stone with a proper skate sharpening, and it's been terrible. Yeah, had awful experiences.
Depends who sharpens it. There's a lot.
Yeah.
So there's a guy in Caledonia, Steve Bears, who used to sharpen out of the rink and then sharpen out of his home, had the machine, the full thing in his home, and I refused to get the entire time that I lived at home, played minor hockey, I refused to get my skate sharpened by anyone but him.
Yeah,
because just maybe it was in my own head or whatever, but it felt the best. I think it just was the best. Yeah, I've never used the Sparks. I know some people that have. I was just thinking, if that's something that you say you know someone who uses it, give it a try, because if it goes well for you, I think maybe long term that might not be a terrible investment if you're someone that wants to sharpen their skates quite a bit and you find that the grind works for you. Just think convenience wise. I do actually the one thing I would recommend is if there's someone at your local rink or sports store that sharpens skates,
get them pads, yeah,
and does a good job, like just be loyal to them. Be very loyal to them. And that way you just go to them consistently, ask for them, because they'll continually do a good job. They'll make sure it's the same. It's like getting your haircut. Like you go to the barber and you ask them like, hey, like, what do you want? I want the same as last time. I want the normal. And they consistently give you a great haircut. And that's the key. It's the same with skate sharpening. So more skate sharpenings is probably better than fewer. I know finances do play a role into it. Or, learn to sharpen your own skates, which is a skill I wish that I learned and I never did.
Well, here's the thing too. And again, like I said, I don't think you need to get your skate sharpened twice a week in minor hockey, unless you really want to. But most places I know that are like actual hockey shops. I'm not talking about, going to Canadian Tire or whatever, the chain, which is, there's nothing wrong with that. But
well, now Canadian Tire is like a sponsor, so thanks for that.
I could have emailed the Canadian Tire rep back and say I blew the ad read this week. But again, if you go to like your local sports store, and like I said, if you're loyal, again, they often have skate sharpening passes. They often are, you know what I mean? You can get your skate sharpened for an entire season at your local store for like $100, which is less than it costs to buy the blades for your skates these days.
Very true.
Right? Sometimes you buy skates now that don't even come with blades. So
what? That's a thing? No, I didn't. I haven't. The last pair of skates I have a pair of like players. I only use player skates now.
Yeah, which is a terrible look.
Oh no, it's a way better look.
No, this is a hill I'll die on.
No, this is a hill that I will die on. I think it looks way less professional using goalie skates to coach. I'm gonna say
I disagree more.
This is one of the few things that we disagree on. I think in terms of the ability to move around, shoot the puck, and then you can still use your edges and demonstrate the same on a player skate.
I agree, Jamie, but every time I go boot in on a perfect RVH in my goalie skates, gets the crowd going. So
are you one of those goalie coaches that also uses their pads when they coach?
I actually, this is hold on. No.
That is one of my things. That's a hill that I will die on. Where if I am the head coach and shooting, don't do that. It's one thing if you have shooters and like you need to demonstrate specific things, but for me, that's a no-fly zone. And that's just a personal thing. So if you're a goalie coach listening, your goalie coach does it does it really matter? No, it doesn't matter. For me, it's just a no-fly zone.
Yeah, I mean, I threw the pads on actually a couple months ago to run a skating station at one of our sessions. We had like a group session, and I was running a skating station.
Yeah, but you're not shooting though.
Correct. I was not shooting. I was demonstrating skate. Well, I got I think I texted you after this. I got fed up. I got fed up one week with maybe this relates to skate sharpening and profiling. Actually, I got really fed up with goalies who don't cut in their down skating with their leg at a high enough angle or their ankle at a high enough angle. So they're transitioning from they're sliding in a down skating. And let's say you're trying to cut to change, you slide to the top of your crease, you cut, you pivot back towards the other post, classic type of skating drill. But people who are keeping their leg really low, and half the time they're slipping out on that cut because their attack angle on the ice on their blade is too low. So I just got fed up. I saw too much of it for 1 week. I said, hey, I'm going to throw my gear on first. I talked to the people I work with. I said, I'm going to throw my gear on because I need to show this. Let me tell you, sometimes you got to do it, Jamie.
Still got it.
Profiling.
Never done it. I think I have, but I don't remember anything about it. Essentially, like when you get it done, like if you have like a more center cut, it gives you like a flat profile, which in theory gives you more stability and more blade. You can get a dual radius. I think I maybe got a dual radius. I can't remember, but it's like two different hollows. So that you get like your inside edge is a little different than your outside edge. So I'm pretty sure someone told my dad to get that once, and we did it. And I don't know if I noticed a difference or not. There's like, you can get like a wedge. So it's like a raised heel, which these are more like for players than goalies.
It's way more for players.
And then you can get like an open heel. So like you're coming backwards, which is the exact opposite of anything I'd ever want any of my goalies to have. And then you can get a custom profiling, which goes way beyond my scope of knowledge in terms of like, you'll have the same way, like there'll be gait and running experts that will look at the way you run and be like, hey, this shoe is the best for you. There are people that do that for skates, and I have no idea how to do it. So, and when it comes to profiling, again, it would have to be something that you would have to try, experiment, ask someone who's smarter than us and more and better, like, more expertise than us, because I don't really know. I'm pretty sure I got a dual radius once, and I don't know if I've ever got it again. And I actually think there's a possibility that I did my whole career and I just never knew it.
Yeah, I think one of the few things I actually know about this is how you profile your skate. If you then take your skates to someone who is not the most experienced sharpener, then like you can also not complement the type of profiling that you have with the type of skate sharpening that you have and the quality of the sharpening you have. So I think the biggest recommendation that we have, I'll say we, but I think you do fall into it, is be consistent with what you're doing, right? So if you're going to go do something that's like a very specific profile, go again, like say, speak to someone who's knowledgeable, someone who's been doing this for a long time, who has the equipment to do it properly, who understands it and isn't just like, like reading the steps out of a binder as they do it in real time. And again, that leads into kind of having your equipment person or having your skate person or going to people you trust and are highly regarded. I'm sure you had the same thing. When I was in college at Ontario Tech, we had the person who did our skates was just like fantastic. Or the person who ran the pro shop in our arena did our skates, and like it was fantastic. Like I never had an issue ever. Like it was the most consistent year of my life with how quality of stuff. And I'm sure you've had situations where you've had your skate. Everyone's had a situation they get their skates and they're like, oh, what is going on? What just happened?
This does not feel, or like I remember there are times where you get your skate and like one is way sharper than the other.
Yes.
And then you go to the plastic at the door and you're trying to dull out your skate because you can't move.
There's nothing worse than like you're on the ice. You get on the ice, you shuffle to your blocker side, and you're like, perfect. You shuffle to your glove side, and you slide 8 feet to the left. They're just like, what just happened?
Or you catch your edge and immediately roll.
Oh, yeah. It's like you go to, all you hear is that like squeaking noise as the skate digs in, like the blade digs into the ice, and you hear a literal squeaking as your skate can't move through the ice.
That is good, but that actually like ties into a few things. And you were saying like, you were talking about different like pet peeves and stuff. There is one that drives me crazy, and so this discussion around like laces and toe ties, or laces and bungees. I know we've talked about it, and like some people will be like, "This is hard and fast evidence that laces are better," and there's no such thing, because if there were, I can assure you that we would have found it by now. Also, to run a study like that would be so difficult and almost impossible that it's just not worth it. So again, preference. But there's a small collection of goalies that I've come across that refuse to wear toe ties.
Just in general?
In general. And I think that might be one of my biggest goalie pet peeves, because their pads are just out of control. They can't do any sort of RVH locks that are any good. And I actually have one goalie who I'm thinking about who refuses to put them on. And every time, like, do you put toe ties on? No. All session, fixing his pads. And I goes, you don't have to do this if your pads are, and he's like, well, my next pair of pads. I was like, do you want me to go? I have some skate laces in my bag. Let me just go get it all the time. Let me give them to you. Just put them on, please. But I know, like, we had talked briefly, and you have a hill you want to die on, which is the bootstrap.
Oh, okay. So yeah, first I got a laces bungees comment. Whatever you wear, just wear it loose enough that your foot sits flat, please. Yeah. Like one of the first conversations I had with one of my goalies this year was he was in pro bungees, in stock bungees. And then I was like, I would recommend switching to pro bungees. They have a little more give to them. You can wear them a little bit longer than stock bungees. Like stock bungees can be just really tight sometimes. Mm-hmm. So that was my first thing. So whether you're wearing bungees, whether you're wearing whatever type of toe tie, if you can't create a gap between the tip of your pad and your skate. So if your skate is being pulled into your boot in a butterfly because of your whatever toe tie device you're using, fix it.
Too tight.
It's fixable. Please fix it. That's my number one recommendation. My number two recommendation is, and directly in line with this, if you are wearing a pad that has a heel strap, some do, right? Trues still use a heel strap.
I think most of them will come with them stock, or like I know Bauer will have the ones that you can slide out. That's a good question. Let me search while you're talking.
I know for a fact True has heel straps as my example. Just if you're going to use them, again, make sure that they're not impacting the way that your foot is sitting in your butterfly, right? So what I mean by that is if you wear your heel strap too tight, and this is really important for younger goalies. It's really important for younger goalies. You know what? It's important for everyone, because for younger goalies, it teaches incorrect mechanics on a butterfly, or more unnecessarily difficult mechanics on a butterfly. For older goalies, it really limits your post abilities. It really limits your ability to down skate, right? I talked about how skate angles need to be aggressive when you're down skating. If you have a heel strap, if it's too tight, if you're wearing your heel strap too tight, one, you won't get good seals into your post because it's going to be cranking your ankle. Second of all, it'll force your pad to lift off the ice and lose its seal when you're down skating and cutting. So if you have an appropriately loose toe strap and a heel strap, you can do a lot of really cool and really advanced down skating with essentially not really lifting your leg very much, right? So you're still maintaining most of a seal on the ice. If you have it too tight, your pads are going to be kind of all over the place as you down skate. Stuff's going to slide under you a lot more just because your pad is really stuck to your leg. You want a little bit of give in your pad, right? I think this is going to be, Jamie, really dating ourselves, but do you remember the Reebok P2 had that wide open leg channel and everyone freaked out? Everyone was like, what is going on?
Loved it. Yeah, absolutely loved it.
Yeah, well, exactly, right? Because that allowed for, not the first time, but one of the most commercialized times for your leg to truly sit flat to the ice, right? Yeah. And now pretty much every pad has that. The knee blocks are crazy these days with how much of an angle your knee's at, but it's still good. Like, it's still a good thing. But your leg should sit relatively flush to the ice, and your foot should be relatively flat. And so for those watching, right, like your foot should be kind of almost perpendicular to the ice in a butterfly. So if you find that your toes being pulled up because of your toe laces, or your heels being pulled up because of your bootstrap, you need to fix that.
Agreed.
It's not even like I would say this is one of the few times where this is not a recommendation, but it's like, no, you need to do this. Like, this is going to change how you play.
Yeah.
For the better.
I think like we talked about, only a few brands still like have it built in. You don't need it. I don't remember. No. I guess like it's more of an older style where like back when goalies didn't always butterfly, it gave you quote unquote more control because it would keep your pad tighter to your foot. But now with the way the pads are structured and the way the game is played, you don't need it. And for the most time, usually when you see it, goalies have it so loose that's actually not doing anything. So just get rid of it. Some goalies will keep it for a style preference, sure, whatever, as long as it's not hindering your play. But it doesn't have any positive benefits, only negative benefit, not benefit. It can't have negative.
Actually, only negative. Weird positive here with some pads, and especially with wearing looser like toe laces, the back heel strap. And I also wore it, quote unquote, Lundqvist style. So I used to customize my skates. I used to like
the Lundqvist loop.
Yeah, I used to like, this would have been when we were, 15 years ago. I used to like super glue a piece of fabric so I could run my.
That is true.
Yeah, I have skates from when I was like an early teenager. I feel very avant-garde with that. Anyways, but that can keep your pad just a little bit like more structured forward facing if you wear it really loose otherwise. So
actually, yeah, right. I do correct myself. That would be the only benefit, is if you don't wear toe ties, which is dumb, or give your toe ties are so loose that your pad would flop around. This would reduce the amount of flopping around. But in terms of anything other benefits,
yeah.
But then I even like go as far as say as like, why are your toe ties that loose?
Thick RVH integrations is the answer.
RVH, it can't do anything else. But boy, can you hit that RVH?
You want to know how to get an 893 save percentage in Canadian University, Jamie? Let me show you.
Yeah. You know what's a funny thing is a lot of my goalies struggle. So we were doing just a simple edge work drill where it was just like a butterfly recovery into your feet, and I asked them to butterfly but extend the leg. I wasn't asking them to a pure half split.
No,
I was asking them to extend
half butterfly.
Yeah, and took so long for a lot of the goalies to be able to comprehend what I meant, and then even when I demonstrated how to like extend into the save rather than drop and kick. And I don't know what, and so like I've started to actually like resort to some of my younger goalies where I actually am teaching a half split, which is a throwback style, just so that they have the muscle pattern and understanding of they need to extend their legs sometimes, especially when there's pucks outside their body. Because what I'm getting is a lot of kids that will just reverse half split. So let's just say that the puck shot to your low glove. You would think like, okay, I'm going to kick out my glove leg. What they were doing is they're actually kicking out their blocker leg
and then
pivoting like sliding and turning. It's throwing everything off. And so this is like just habits. So I've been trying to break these habits in many of the goalies that are coming, that I'm getting. I want to say that coming across my desk. It doesn't make any sense. The goalies that I'm getting. And so I'm really trying to focus on that. But I don't know kind of what happened in the game, because like you look at like some of the top goalies, they have no problem. Like the Vasilevsky, he's like, I love using sharpening clips because he's unbelievable at using half splits. I just don't know what happened in terms of development and why this isn't why this is hard, and why the pure butterfly is the default versus just reacting with the feet. Because you should go down on almost all shots, but you need to extend the foot in order to cover the post. So that's been a really weird thing that I've been coming across a lot. So like in my skating patterns now, I've been forcing the kids, and some of them are not kids, some of them are teenagers, to have to either use a pure half split and knee up the ice, or that half butterfly, just so that they understand what that's supposed to feel like, so that they're not handicapping themselves when they get onto the ice and pucks are shot outside their body and they can't make that save, or covering the 6 or 7 hole, depending on which way you look at it.
Yeah, and so that's actually something that I've been thinking about a lot lately, only because it's something that I have been noticing about goalies who I think are better than other goalies. It's been like a delineating factor for me.
Now that you say that, yes, you're right. I didn't put those two together.
No, it's like one of the things where, so again, I've been talking to some, scouts at different levels and coaches at different levels, university, CHL, about different goalies and things like that. And one of the things I'll say is that there are some goalies who are able to engage into saves. They actively are making saves. And goalies who are just butterflying straight down every time are still making saves. That's not what we're saying here. But there's a difference between engaging into a save and sort of just going down into the save. And I think most people would know that difference, right? So that's one of the biggest things is, I think it is sometimes a little bit harder. And I find because of it, Jamie, I don't know if you've seen this too, is it feels like it's always one or the other. I feel like I have goalies who are going, like it's either they're going straight down, or let's say on a lateral movement play, they're sliding laterally. They extend and kick and open up so much because there isn't that ability to like engage in a wider like extension leg.
Yeah, it's like keeping some structure. It's either, like you said, it's either going all out in splits every time, or extending with the wrong leg and then getting beat because they haven't learned, or they haven't learned because no one's taught them. Like you can still keep some components of structure, like keeping a quote unquote tight butterfly, but still extending that foot, keeping the knee flat, and getting a good seal, leaning over with the upper body and making a good save. And it's not a flexibility issue. Like if someone listening's like, well, maybe it's just when my hips are tight. If I could to do that, and my hips are the worst of all time. Like I stretch more than any human being on the planet just to be average flexibility. So even some of my most flexible goalies, it's not a flexibility thing. It's a motor control, coordination. They just haven't been taught these patterns yet. And because I think a lot of times it's because at a young age, kids aren't shooting that hard. Right. So for the most part, I think we talked about this briefly, like goalies when they're younger, in terms of the speed of the play, should be pretty, will be ahead of the puck most of the time because their eyes are still pretty good. Their reaction time's there, their processing time's there. And then usually when guys and girls start to go through puberty, all of a sudden there's this huge gap in terms of speed because now guys and girls can start to rip the pucks and the goalies are going to be caught behind. And that's where it becomes a big issue. And you see those goalies pulling away from shots. They're not working into it because all of a sudden they can't process and react in time, and they never develop those patterns And so the kids, like Bennett said, like it's a differentiating factor between good goalies and not so great goalies is the ones that have learned those patterns and they're able to extend and work into saves have less issues when it comes to adapting and growing and developing to that newfound change of speed that happens when kids start to go through puberty and then start to strength train and have all these benefits and get stronger and quicker, and the pace of the play increases. So yeah, like it's, now that you say that in terms of like a differentiating thing, you're definitely right, because the goalies that are typically more successful that I have, even at a younger age, don't struggle as much or at all with this versus the ones that, you know, require a lot more work. They're playing at a lower level. They typically tend to have this issue, which again, like that's my responsibility as a goalie coach, is to fix these things. And I'd actually, you know what, that gives me a good point. I actually might make that probably my Instagram post for maybe tomorrow or Tuesday or Wednesday, but I have a video of one of my goalies where I'm just standing there with my stick and I'm saying, you need to drop and kick my stick blade.
Yeah. You dive into that save.
Drive into the save. Do it again. Do it again. I feel like 14, 15 times. They finally did it right. Okay, let's do it again. And then we start to like hammer that home. So I think it's just like, because modern goaltending, the half split doesn't fall under that umbrella because it's more of a vintage thing, but like it's also not at all.
Yeah, and again, like I'd say that driving into that save, you still want to seal the ice with your pad. We're not asking you to kick it and leave your knee a foot off the ice, but engaging and driving into that pad, you'll see goalies who do it. And again, a really good example, we go to the well a lot in this. Shesterkin does it well. Saros does it really well, where he drives into those, because he has to, because he's not very big. So
and like
engage into saves.
I have small goalies with short legs that aren't doing this.
Well, Jeremy, like sounds like it's a goalie coach issue.
It does sound like it's a goalie coach issue. And I'm just like, you of all goalies, like you need to, your legs aren't long. You are
not long.
5'1". You need to extend your legs.
I'll say the last thing to kind of tie that in is I find it pretty comparable to goalies who have a much more natural time coming forward and smothering pucks with their hands. So I'd say that I find it a pretty direct parallel with goalies who are able to process and make that connection. Okay, my pad extends this way, my hand comes over, I don't get scored on anymore, right? Especially in tight. Now, again, driving into saves is both relevant in tight, but very relevant from distance. It helps you be more consistent in controlling rebounds. If you're engaging and driving into distance shots with your pads, even if you don't get a stick on it, you're more likely to put that puck into a better spot because you're intentionally driving to it. This does not mean slide into your saves. Please don't slide into your saves. Unless it's a backdoor one-timer and you have to slide. But don't slide into a direct shot save, please. It'll make Jamie sad, and especially sad. And the only other thing I can really say that's relevant to not making you or I sad is if you go and sign up for Jamie Phillips's Patreon. It is the best place that you can get goaltending information. There's a free component that I've never ever checked out, but I blatantly advertise for. But there's also a paid component, which you should check out because I know what Jamie posts on there and the content is excellent. So as always, please consider going to check out Jamie Phillips's Patreon. And while you're over there, go check out him on Instagram, on YouTube, and all other social medias that he is posting. For people who are watching and listening, thank you so much for liking, subscribing, and sending this to a friend. This has been an ad read powered by coffee.
I need a new coffee. I'm definitely not caffeinated enough. But thanks for listening, everyone. Hey, enjoy the holidays. If you celebrate Christmas, Merry Christmas.
Well, enjoy it.
That time this one drops. But enjoy whatever holidays. And if you don't celebrate any holidays around there, enjoy the week. Hopefully it's not super cold where you are, because it's a cold day for us in Grand Rapids.
Chilly.
Chilly.
All right, Jamie. Until next time.